Hello and welcome to the New World Order. This is Sheena Alexandra, and today I am so honored to have Patrick Wood in the studio once again for our second chat about what's going on in the world today. Patrick is an author, he's a speaker, he's a historian, and he has uncovered some truths about this country that not many people probably know about. They're not watching about this on the news. I mean, unless you're at Technocracy.news, then you're up to speed. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today, and I am so excited for this chat.
That's good. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so let's just bring the viewers up to speed with what we talked in the last interview that we had. So I'm going to do a recap, and then I think you should do a recap because you're the expert here. But from my understanding and what I've gathered over the last year, listening to hundreds of hours of you and others, is that we've got a few organizations here that are in the mix. We've got the Trilateral Commission, founded in 1973 by David Rockefeller. And the Trilateral Commission is an organization that many of our presidents have really enjoyed participating in, and they affect global policy, and they have lots of really great ideas in how to manage the world and the relations in the world. And the Trilateral Commission is also part of the UN, another organization that David Rockefeller has set up. And this is an organization that I think, according to you, Patrick, 173 nations are all part of. And the UN is responsible for rolling out regulations and standards that we all think are protecting us. But, as we know, that couldn't be further from the truth. The UN is rolling out 5G, rolling out Agenda 21, and is also responsible for rolling out technocracy, as we are starting to learn. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you because you're the expert. We're going to be talking about technocracy right now, but we are going to get into Patrick's new book, The Hard Road to World Order. And yeah, we're going to pretty much pick up where we left off. So over to you, Patrick. Can you just give the audience your recap of what we talked about, and then maybe bring us up to speed with some of the news that has happened on Technocracy News since we've last spoken?
Right. The United Nations, which has been around for decades, is the main purveyor of sustainable development. That's their mantra. Sustainable development, as I bring out in both of my books on technocracy, is technocracy. It's a resource-based economic system. This is the doctrine that the United Nations has been pushing since at least 1992, officially, with the occurrence of the first Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. That produced the Agenda 21 document that we all know about now, pretty much. And the United Nations has taken that forward in time with the 2030 agenda, which was passed just 3 or 4 years ago, and the new urban agenda, which is part of Habitat 3. All of the sustainable development mantra pushes an economic system that will result in total control over the global economic system. It's not political per se, but it's an economic system. And they have sworn, the United Nations has sworn, to overthrow capitalism and free enterprise altogether and to replace it with this resource-based economic system. As such, the United Nations doesn't drive anything except policy. And what people do with the policy has wide latitude. For instance, when they talk about data, or when they talk about private property or zoning issues or whatever, or eliminating poverty, whatever it might be, the private sector, which is driving this whole thing anyway, The private sector then says, aha, I can now go do, or we can now go do such and such, and it will fall in line with whatever the United Nations says. So it's important to recognize that, number one, this UN doctrine came originally from the Trilateral Commission in the 1980s. The doctrine that led to the first Earth Summit was created by Gru Harlem Brundtland. She was a member of the Trilateral Commission. She was chairwoman, I guess I'd say, of the Brundtland Commission that was appointed by the United Nations to study what came up. And they produced a book. She was the executive editor of the book. It was called Our Common Future. Mm-hmm. The book everybody should get and read, because it's really not our common future. You gotta read it. It's on the market. You go to Amazon and buy it. I hate to give any money, but so the United Nations has set about pushing all the nations of the world towards sustainable development everywhere. Out of that license to steal, if you will, there have been many different initiatives that have come forth that are in line with technocracy. A good example is smart grid. That is the installation of these Wi-Fi enabled smart meters now that they put on the side of homes and businesses to transmit information from your home or business back to the utility. And that sounds innocent enough on the surface of it, but those new smart meters are able to extract data from your house. Mm-hmm. You don't know it, you can't sense it, but every time you turn on an appliance or a washing machine or a heater or a pool pump or whatever, they know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and basically how much, of course, energy you're consuming. Mm-hmm. Smart grid was not specified by the United Nations per se, but the international consortium that put it together, lo and behold, you find many members of the Trilateral Commission involved. You find companies that are associated with Trilateral Commission companies, if you will, connected companies. And it's one big happy family. And so you have things like smart grid, and then you also have things like smart city technology now, which has to do with the Internet of Things, connecting everything together. That's where 5G comes in, by the way. And all of the smart city technology was not designed within the United Nations. It was designed by companies like NVIDIA, Siemens from Germany, GE, IBM has been a big developer of smart city technology. Microsoft is a big developer. But all of these companies have bought into the idea that smart cities, which plays into the New Urban Agenda doctrine, smart cities are the wave of the future. So they've all offered products, and they're out canvassing the cities all around the world. Hey, we got the latest thing here. You need to get into this, boys. Really supersize your city. So that's kind of how the thing is lining up here. It's the United Nations is up to their eyeballs in this. If it weren't for the United Nations, there would be no pushing this to the other 193 nations of the world. Yeah. But that's the role that they have played. Yeah. But the whole thing, basically, we need to remember is still part of the overall plan to capture the resources of the world, take away from you and I, to capture the resources of the world, and then set up a system such that they will produce only what they choose to produce, and you will consume what they tell you you're allowed to consume. And I wanted to dig up a quote here. I'm looking at my book right now. I wanted to find something here in particular and read it to you that just underscores what I'm saying here. Back in 1992, as I said, the first Earth Summit took place. it created Agenda 21, which is not a myth. Oh my gosh. Go to Amazon and type in Agenda 21 and the book will come up. Right on it. They published that. Mm-hmm. So it's not a myth. And if anybody says that, just smack.
It's not a conspiracy too. I mean, we'll go on to that in a few minutes, but keep going.
You know, it's amazing. Well, in 1994, there was a book published called The Earth Brokers. The authors, Pratap Chatterjee and Matthias Finger, were principals in the United Nations roll-up or ramp-up to the Earth Summit. They were there every step of the way, part of the committees and stuff, you know, that were formed to create Agenda 21. These were insiders at the highest level. Mm-hmm. They did not buy what they heard, even though they participated, and they wrote this whistleblower book, so to speak, in 1994 called The Earth Brokers, okay? Here's what they summarized. Now, mind you, they were not of the same mindset that you and I are today. These are people that were pro-sustainable development originally, okay? They were pro-environmentalism originally. I don't know where they stand today, but that's what they were back then. So this is what they concluded at the end of in their book. They said, we argue that UNCED, now that's UNCED, UNCED stands for United Nations Council for Economic Development. Okay, so UNCED, I'll just pronounce it UNCED.
Yeah.
We argue that UNCED has boosted precisely the type of industrial development that is destructive for the environment, the planet, and its inhabitants. We see how, as a result of UNCED, the rich will get richer, the poor poorer, while more and more of the planet is destroyed in the process. Okay? You can understand what he's saying, I'm sure. We don't need to read between the lines here. We don't need to spiritualize it. This is no, what do you want to call it? This is no conspiracy whatsoever. No. This is what they said as they observed the process from the inside, hoping that it was going to straighten out a lot of things and really put the world on a new track. Mm-hmm. But it was basically just more of the same. The con game was just expanded from our country to the whole planet. Same game that they were playing before. Another example of this that I have in my book, The Hard Road to World Order, was a young lady who got to give a speech at the end of the proceedings. There was a group of young people that were allowed to be observers to the whole process as they had all these meetings and stuff. And they were the proverbial flies on a wall. You know, they got to go, they couldn't vote, they couldn't speak up, but they got to go and observe. And of course, the UN's idea was to kind of inoculate, their little brains, their young brains, and to be future leaders. But again, not all of them bought into the program. And this one young lady from Nairobi, she wrote this. This is just absolutely priceless. And again, remember, she was not like you and me necessarily. She was an environmentalist. Okay, so she said, this was her speech. She left the audience speechless. There's no way they could have responded to this. There's nothing they could have said. But listen to what she said. This is part of her speech. Mm-hmm. The summit has attempted to involve otherwise powerless people of society in the process. But by observing the process, we now know how undemocratic and untransparent the UN system is. Those of us who have watched the process have said that UNCED has failed. As young people, we beg to differ. Multinational corporations, the United States, Japan, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, have got away with what they always wanted, carving out a better and more comfortable future for themselves. UNSAID has ensured increased domination by those who already have power. Worse still, it has robbed the poor of the little power they had. That's just horrible. It made them victims of a market economy that has thus far threatened our planet. Amidst elaborate cocktails, travailing, and partying, new negotiators realized how critical their decisions are to our generation. She's only like 18. By failing to address such fundamental issues as militarism, regulation of transnational corporations, democratization of the international aid agencies, and inequitable terms of trade. Now listen, she said, just before she sat down, she said, "My generation has been damned." And she sat down.
Wow.
She
I love that.
blistered them.
And she's 18 years old.
That's right. She got it.
That's now, it, Patrick. Go on.
This is it. This is the deal, Sheena. This was a con from the get-go, and many other people on the inside of UNSAID recognized, wrote, and spoke about it extensively in the early 1990s.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything different than what these people are saying. Mm-hmm. This is a con. The same people that were in charge before are still in charge now, but they make you think, oh, this is utopia coming, folks. We're going to eliminate poverty. We're going to have fair housing, adequate housing for all. We're going to have jobs with dignity, lifelong learning experiences.
No one left behind, remember? No one left behind.
No one left behind. These people are selling snake oil.
Yes. Kate, can I just stop there and say a couple of things? First of all, you started the conversation by saying, all these groups that these people know. Well, I kind of disagree with that. I don't think a lot of people know about the Trilateral Commission, nor do they know about the UN. Or, they hear about it, but they don't understand it. That's number one. Number two, the UN, like you stated, they're setting regulations and standards. And in the 5G situation, we're all abiding by these standards. But these standards have been set by people who are not qualified at all. They're not qualified. They just think that they have the power to make these rules because they suit them, and they're not suiting us. And that's kind of what I came up front and center with, just like that 18-year-old woman. You uncover this just slightly, and you're starting to see, whoa, this is huge. This is deception. And we don't even have control in our own countries because this global organization that's running the show and knows best is running the show.
That's right. I'm chuckling even as you're saying this because my headline article on Technocracy.news today is about an Australian advisor to the prime minister down there. And he stated that climate change is a United Nations-led ruse to establish New World Order. And this article, people can go on the website and get that and see what it's all about. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Within this one article, oh my gosh, he did say this. He said this is absolutely a sham. And the only reason he said it was that the former head of climate change at the United Nations, Christiana Figueres, was coming down to Australia. So she should be there today, I think, mm-hmm. to speak. So he was giving her the what for, right? And so he made this statement publicly. Oh man, the newspaper wrote a small little article about this guy. And what was his name? His name is, Maurice Newman.
Okay. He's in Australia right now?
Pardon?
Is he in Australia?
He's in Australia. He's he's an advisor to Tony Abbott.
Okay.
They called him within this one article anti-science fringe views. They called him wacko. These are quotes. They called him wacko. They called him bizarre. They called him a crazed conspiracy theorist. All in one article. And they, this guy hit the nail on the head. And let me tell you, when somebody comes after you with an ad hominem attack, that means you are right and they are wrong.
I know.
They got nothing to say. All they can do is call you names.
I know.
And that's what they're doing to him right now. He's calling him in. That's what they do to me, and they'll do it to you too.
People are already doing it. I mean, I don't have it to your extent, but some of the things that I've had a hard time kind of overcoming this one feedback when I'm talking about the stuff that I know. They tell me that everybody has belief systems, and your belief system isn't any different than the other belief system. I'm just thinking, whoa, hang on, it's not religion, this is not theory, this is truth. And if you just do a little bit of research, you'll see yourself, this is truth. And they just say, I don't want to buy into that. And I'm like, okay, well, don't buy into it, but you're going to be left behind.
Yep. Well, they'll just get run over. Maybe not physically like they did in China one time at Tiananmen, where the tanks just went, what's a few citizens, and they squash them. But the steamroller of technocracy is moving forward. Very few people understand what it is, and those who do, like Maurice Newman,
mm-hmm.
Are vilified if they would dare say such a thing.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely, positively verifiable, documentably true.
Yeah.
And in fact, both of my books document this so far to the hilt that I've only had one published piece of criticism since I published both books. And the older one, Technocracy Rising, has been out now for a few years. But I challenge people. In my book, I challenge them too.
Mm-hmm.
If you think my facts are wrong, I want you to come to me and challenge me with your evidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if your evidence is clear and supersedes, maybe I made a mistake, I will retract and readjust whatever it is I'm saying. I've had not one person, not one single person, approach me on that basis because I know really they have nothing to say.
Yeah.
It's like that girl from Nairobi that blistered their ears so bad
mm-hmm.
that they were speechless. There's nothing they could say. They just sat there and I hope this girl will go away.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave. And if anybody's ever heard Nigel Farage from the UK
mm-hmm.
give speeches before the EU or even before groups that he's disagreeing with. If you've ever listened to Nigel Farage, he's got a mouth like a flamethrower, I have to say. But he doesn't hold back. He's like this Maurice Newman down there. He doesn't hold back whatsoever.
Good.
And he literally blisters the ears of the people he's speaking to. And I've heard him speak to EU meetings.
Yeah.
And they sit there with this shocked look
mm-hmm.
on their face,
mm-hmm.
dumbfounded. Some are just looking down at their papers, and he's going to be done pretty soon. Others of them are watching him like their eyes get big. I can't believe he's saying what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just see the steam begin to come off their foreheads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when he's done and sits down, instead of responding to him, they just maybe 5, 10, 20 seconds to go by, and all of a sudden you hear the gavel go down and they pick right up where they were before and keep talking. We don't even recognize Nigel Farage as being a human being, much less anybody has said anything to us 5 minutes ago.
I would have stood up and clapped and cheered him on. But okay, I want to ask you a question related to that, because I want to ask, do we need more people like Nigel to stick up for us and stand against this. But before I ask this, I just want to let you know that for that one person that is challenging you, Patrick, just from the community that I'm involved in, you are huge in this movement. They all love you. They're all very grateful for the work that you're doing. Every time I mention your name, they always have praise to say about you. And a few people wanted to say hi and hello. I'll keep that now for myself until later. But Patrick, we are really grateful for this work that you're doing. And for every one person that's going to challenge you, you've got like 100 people behind you. Yeah, and really appreciating this work that you're doing. So on that note, are we going to see you, like you already are like the Nigel, you're like very kind, smoking, and I don't know if you get aggressive, but do we need people like that because my dad's now stepping up about 5G and I'm now calling myself an activist and people are kind of rising.
Yes, we do. And not everybody can behave like Nigel Farage does and get away with it. He is a unique guy, no doubt. But we need people who will stand up in front of the facts, not conspiracy theories. There's so much misinformation that's floating around, even in our own community. Mm-hmm. We need to resist that and take a stand and say, I will not speak about what I do not know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. They get mad. I mean, it's understandable. I'm not really throwing a rock at anybody, but it's understandable. Mm-hmm. You hear a few things and you get upset, and then I got to tell somebody. Mm-hmm. And you end up telling the wrong information, and you're really not helping the cause at that point. But if you've ever sat in a one of those little birthday party games or a baby shower game or whatever, where one person tells a secret, whispers a secret to the person.
Chinese whispers.
Yeah, and it goes around the room, and by the time it gets back, it's totally different.
Right.
And everybody laughs about how hilarious the end result is from the original secret. Well, this happens in our community all the time. Mm-hmm. And, it needs to be resisted, honestly, and it needs to be just stopped. I'm not sure how to do that, but I'll just bring it up and say, you know what? Yeah. Don't talk about what you don't know definitively. Yeah. Now, having said that, it is easy to find out definitively what the facts are that you should be speaking about. Mm-hmm. Read my books, for instance. There's other books that are good too. Yeah. Get the facts, find out definitively, get them in your head, internalize them, and then you go out and you speak with, get this, capital A, authority. If you want to win somebody over, you must speak with authority. Mm-hmm. That's where Nigel Farage just nails them. Mm-hmm. This guy, I don't know if he has a photographic memory, but this guy has a mind like a steel trap. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine. I've never seen anybody like this before. Mm-hmm. He can pull facts and numbers out of his head so fast, like a machine gun going off. That's awesome. And they're all right. Yeah. And he gets, all you can do is say, stop. Anyway, but this is the key thing. Yeah. We're trying to shine some light on the facts of things. And I'll tell you what, I say this to anybody who gets kind of sliding off it or slouching towards a conspiracy theory. We have enough to worry about that we know about. Mm-hmm. We don't need to cook up things mm-hmm. that aren't related. That we have enough right over here, right? The study that we should be concerned about, and we'd never get out. In fact, if somebody were to offer a college degree for everything we're talking about right now, they could probably have a 4-year undergrad degree and at least a 3-year master's, if not a part of a PhD. Oh. You could study this for years, only what we know, and you'd be a political scientist by the time you're done, PhD professor or whatever. But there's lots of stuff on the table that is absolutely actual, demonstratable. What can I say?
Yeah, I know. I've done thousands of hours of research just in the short amount of time that I've been awake. And, then there's people like you who spent decades researching this stuff. And I'm surprised you're still all together and laughing and making other people laugh. But can we? I really want to dive into the juice of the new book, Hard Road to World Order. But I think it would be really can we just give a 2-minute overview of technocracy, just to get the audience up to speed, just with the general idea of technocracy and how we're starting to see it here in the US, and then what is the hard road to world order, and how have we progressed since technocracy rising?